When I think about this closing session, there's a story I always like to tell that I think is quite fitting here. You may have experienced this before. Have any of you ever seen a baby take their first steps? I remember my daughter Josephine, she's 4 years old now, but we were on a retreat with all of our students at the Augustine Institute. My family was there, and little Josephine had been thinking about that walking thing for a while. She'd pull herself up on a coffee table or pull herself up on a chair and stand like this, and she did that day. She found a chair and she crawled to it, pulled herself up, and all the students were all around, and they're cheering, Josephine, Josephine, go for it. And I'm over here saying, come on, baby, you can do it. Come on, take that first step. And she lets go with one hand, kind of smiles, thinks about it. And she goes, I don't know if I want to leave the security of this chair here. And she looks over again, maybe. And we're all cheering her on. And finally, she let go with one hand, but then she did something she had never done before. She let go with a second hand. And she's standing on her own 2 feet for the first time. And she's glowing, she's all excited, and all the students are cheering, Josephine, Josephine, I'm here, come on, take your first step, come on. And she's all excited, and then all of a sudden, her legs start doing this little shake thing here. And she's going like this, and that look of excitement quickly turned to horror. And she clung onto that chair desperately and looked at me as if to say, Dad, what are you trying to make me do? But eventually she got her footing again, and she let go with one hand. And she let go with the second hand. And this time, when her legs got a little shaky, instead of going backwards toward the security of the chair, Josephine fell forward, 1, 2, 3, into my arms, and she took her first step, and everyone was cheering, and she crawled right back to that chair, and she said, again? And she took 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, and she crawled back again, 5 steps, and we played that game for an hour that afternoon. We played that game for many weeks, and eventually, walking became Josephine's primary mode of transportation. But when we step out into something that's unknown, and we have to let go of what's familiar and what's comfortable, that can be kind of scary. But yet that's exactly what we're being all called to do when we walk with Jesus in discipleship. And this is something Pope Francis is really emphasizing for us here. I want to share with you a great story about Pope Francis. Somebody in an interview once asked Pope Francis a very basic question. Who are you? Who are you? Who is Cardinal Bergoglio? Who are you? It's a very simple question, but how would you answer that question if someone asked you, who are you? Who are you? If someone asked me, who's Edward Sri? I'd probably say, I'm a teacher, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, I'm a son of God. I would probably talk about those things. But that's not how Pope Francis answered that question. He didn't say, I'm the Supreme Pontiff of the Catholic Church. He didn't say, I'm the Pope, or I'm a priest, or I'm a bishop. He didn't even say, I'm a Catholic. Do you know what he said? His answer was, I am a sinner. I am a sinner. And then when he gave this response, he was very concerned that people would just think, he has to say that because he's the Pope and he has to be humble. But he told the reporter, he said, I'm a sinner, and this is the most accurate definition. It's not a figure of speech, a literary genre. I am a sinner. He was very passionate about this, and he wanted to come up with a certain image that would help express what he really meant by this. And he turned to one of his favorite paintings. It's a painting by the artist Caravaggio in Rome. It's at the Church of San Luigi, right on the side of the Piazza Navona in Rome. And it's a beautiful painting of the call of St. Matthew. And in this painting, you have St. Matthew entering in, or St. Matthew with all of his friends in the tax collector's office. And Jesus walks into his world, enters into his world, and you see all of Matthew and his friends on this side of the picture, and they're all in darkness, and they're gloomy, they're not happy, they're sad, and Jesus is coming in, and there's this window behind him, there's this pouring light, this light shining into the darkness as Jesus, the light of the world, enters Matthew's world. And Jesus points at Matthew, and he's calling Matthew to follow him. And when you look on this side of the picture, you see there's a bunch of other people here, Matthew's friends, and some of them are just miserly counting the money. How much money did we get today? They're not even aware that Jesus has entered the room. They're not aware of each other. And you see another man sitting here just kind of playing with his coins. He's got a lot of money. He's got all the money he could have, but he's not happy. He's left empty. And they're just all caught up in themselves. But then there's this man in the middle here. There's Matthew himself. Matthew, the tax collector. And he sees Jesus walking in and pointing at him. And he's got this amazing expression on his face. It's as if he's saying, me? You want me? Surely you mean someone else. You're not asking me, Matthew, the sinner, Matthew, the tax collector. I mean, I collect taxes for the Roman oppressors. I'm working for the enemy of the Jewish people here. You're calling me to become a disciple of you? And he's just shocked. But his expression on his face also shows that he's intrigued by this new possibility, that there's something interesting here. He's wondering, maybe my life will be better if I say yes. I've heard about this Jesus, and the people following him seem to be happy. Maybe I'd be happier. I'm not really happy with this life. I think I want to follow him. I think that'd be exciting. I think I want to take the step out of here and go follow Jesus. And right when he thinks that, you can tell he's also thinking, whoa, I don't know if I want to do that. And kind of like my daughter just going back and wanting to cling on to that chair. Matthew's there. He's wondering, oh my goodness, that might mean I have to change. That might mean I have to leave my friends here, or I might have to change the way I'm living, and I don't want to let go of all these money bags. It's a beautiful moment that captures that pivot point between Matthew the tax collector and Matthew the disciple. What will Matthew do? And Pope Francis says we should all put ourselves right there in the role of St. Matthew. He himself puts himself there. Pope Francis says this, that finger pointing at Matthew, that's me. I feel like him. I feel like Matthew. It's the gesture of Matthew that strikes me. He holds on to his money as if to say, no, not me. No, this money's mine. And then Pope Francis says, here, this is me, a sinner, on whom the Lord has turned his gaze. Pope Francis is constantly challenging us to encounter Jesus Christ in this way, to encounter him daily as a disciple, being called to take another step, called to love more, to give more, to surrender more. And this is really what discipleship is all about. A relationship with Christ is not about a one-time Bible study, a one-time event, or a one-time Seek conference. It's about a lifelong, ongoing invitation to constantly take the next step. And Pope Francis is concerned that there are many Christians, many Catholics out there that are just settling into their mediocrity, and they become stagnant Christians. And maybe they go to church on Sunday, maybe they're involved in something in their parish, but they're not really growing in their faith. They're settling in comfort and not greatness, kind of like the Chicago Cubs. Now, I'm originally from Chicago. Any Chicagoans out there? Chicago, Illinois? Any Cubs fans? How many Cubs fans out there? I'm a Cubs fan. And being a Cubs fan, it's very Catholic to be a Cubs fan because there's just a lot of suffering involved. See, I'm a realistic Cubs fan. There's just a lot of suffering, so it's very Catholic. The only difference is this. Catholic suffering is at least redemptive. Chicago Cubs suffering is just suffering. That's all it is. There's no meaning and purpose to it all. You think about the Cubs, they never aspire to anything great. They don't strive for greatness. You know what the 3 favorite words of a Cubs fan is? Maybe next year. And we usually start saying that around the end of April. It's like this, oh, wow, we had a 500 record this year. That's not that bad. We're doing well. If you make it to the playoffs once every decade or two, you feel, okay, that's pretty good for a Cubs fan. But the World Series, that's just way beyond us. We would never want to aspire to anything so great as that. And sadly, that's how many Christians live their lives. They live their lives, okay, well, I'm playing the game. I show up on the field every Sunday for Mass. I follow the rules, I believe in the church's teachings, but that's not enough. To really be great, we're called to give more. We're called to grow constantly, to encounter Jesus like Pope Francis is calling us to constantly seek what is the next step that the Lord is asking me to take. And this is really what discipleship is all about. Always looking for what the next step of growth is going to be in our spiritual life. If we think about the Blessed Virgin Mary, who here loves Mary? I know we talked a lot about Mary. We love Mary for all the great things God did for her, but for also her great love for us and her great faith. And we all think about that great moment at the Annunciation where the angel reveals the message to her that she's going to be the mother of the Messiah, and then she says, yes. She says, let it be done unto me according to your word. And we look at that moment and we say, we want to be like Mary. And we should be inspired by that. But when we look at Mary, we want to look at not just that one moment, though. Because as St. John Paul II said, that initial fiat, her initial yes, had to be renewed continuously, over and over throughout her life. And when you look at Mary's life in Scripture, you see that every step of the way, God is inviting her to take another step of faith. It's like a father. You ever see a father kind of walking with their kid like this? They're holding both hands, and then they let go with one hand, let go with the other, and they keep walking. This is what God did with Mary. It wasn't just at the Annunciation, say, yes, oh good, now we're all done. I mean, the very next verse, chapter 1, verse 39 in Luke is, okay, now she goes in haste to go serve Elizabeth. So even though she's pregnant, she's got to get ready for the Messiah coming. She goes out and serves. And then in the next chapter, chapter 2, she gives birth to Jesus in these poor conditions and has to lay this baby in a manger. And she's probably wondering, John Paul II says, what happened? Gabriel told me that this was going to be the great king. And he's treated like this. Why is this happening? And when we follow Jesus, many times we're going to wonder, why? Why is this happening? And we need to do what Mary does in Luke 2:19 in that scene. She keeps and ponders this all in her heart. She prayerfully considers, Lord, what are you trying to teach me here? What are you trying to show me? And God's showing her that, yes, Jesus is this great king, but he's coming with the humility of a child, and he's coming in great suffering, because that's how he's going to establish his kingship on the cross. And then 40 days later, she's at the temple presenting her child, Jesus, and then here all of a sudden the stranger comes up, takes this child out of her arms, and then starts talking about how this child's going to be hated, he's going to be opposed, and one day he's going to be killed, and a sword will pierce your soul also. Mary had to say yes again. And then another step of faith comes 12 years later when she's at the temple again, and she loses Jesus for 3 days, and he's going about his Father's business. She's wondering, why is this happening? And then at Cana, she has to renew her faith again, and ultimately all the way at the cross. But you see, my friends, it wasn't just a one-time fiat. It was a lifelong invitation. And here's my question for all of you here. At this conference, what is Jesus inviting you to? There are probably many things that have touched your heart at this Seek conference. But what you want to do is we prepare now in a few minutes to go to Mass eventually. We're going to go to Mass, and at that Mass, we're going to have time to prayerfully kind of take this all in. But I want you to think of one very specific thing that you think God is inviting you to do. That you've been living here in comfort, you've been living a certain way, and God's inviting you to take this step. What is that step? For some of you, that might be simply taking time for prayer. I pray a little bit, but I don't have a regular prayer life. If I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus, if I'm really going to follow Christ, I need time for prayer every day. I need time where I'm just in conversation with him, encountering him like Matthew did, always wondering, hey, Lord, what are the things keeping me from following you more? Maybe some of you are sensing, I think after being at this conference, I feel I need to step up more in leadership. I need to share my faith more. Maybe I'm called to lead a Bible study. Maybe I'm considering becoming a focused missionary, and I've been scared to think about that. But whatever it is, maybe God's inviting you to step up in leadership. Maybe there's a certain relationship you're in, and we've had a lot of talks about relationships, and it's given you some new perspective, and you realize there's some things I need to change with my boyfriend or with my girlfriend or with this particular person, and I'm afraid to do it, but I think God's calling me to. Or maybe there's a certain moral issue. There's something I'm doing that I deep down know is not right. I know that Jesus doesn't want me to do this, and I keep rationalizing this and giving excuses for myself, but I sense Jesus wants me to let go of that and take that step forward. What will you do with this call that Jesus is placing on your heart? At the very center for all of us, there's the question of who's really at the center of our lives. Is Jesus just one part of our life? Is our Catholic faith just one aspect of our life? Or is Jesus really the Lord of our lives? Is he really number one? And is he really reigning and guiding all that I do? And so what I want you to do here is sometime before you get back to campus, whether it's after this talk or at Mass or when you're on the bus going back home, take out a pen, take out some paper, and I want you to write down the one big thing. There are many things you got from this weekend, but one big thing you sense God is really calling you to do. And it may be something you're scared about, maybe something you're not sure how it's all going to work out, but write it down. Write it down and make a resolution that you're gonna live out this call. You're going to follow him. And when you feel those moments where you're about to step out, know you're going to have these temptations to say, well, it's not a big deal. I just want to go back here to what was comfortable and familiar in the way I used to do things. And at that moment, remember St. Matthew. He didn't turn back. He ended up saying yes, and he left his money bags behind. What are the money bags that are keeping you from following Jesus more? Write that down. Make a resolution to let go of those things and to follow Jesus. And then, for the rest of your life, make sure that you seek the one who moves you. Seek the one who moves you, Jesus Christ. Seek him daily in your life as a disciple. Encounter him every day like Matthew did. Seek the Lord and what is the next step that he's calling you to take. And when you do that, you will, as Curtis always likes to quote from St. Catherine of Siena, you will set the world on fire. Thank you so much, and God bless.